welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today, we're going to talk about the very interesting subject of representation. So, what is going on? Why am I making this video? Okay, after WrestleMania 40, Bayley did an interview where she did some really bad Spanish and referred to herself as Bayley Martinez. This triggered somebody on Twitter who decided that Bayley and others like her, like Zelina Vega, should stop calling themselves Latinas because they can't speak Spanish and don't appropriately represent Latino heritage. And from that, we actually start thinking about whether we're playing the one drop rule when it comes to Latinos. Of course, that doesn't count for Bayley, whose father is Mexican. So she's a little bit more than one drop. Okay, but this is the argument that was put in place by the Twitter guy. So he says, most of the WWE Latinas are being booked and marketed as the sassy and flavored Latinas. Very stereotypical, by the way. But when they have women from Latin countries, they can't even book them right. They just need Latina descent to feel inclusive. There are few exceptions like Nydia and Lola Vice, who both have embraced their cultures and their ancestry. They both have proved that being Latina is not just another label to them, but part of their identity. Later, he says, I'm not trying to get Bayley hate because she has tried to make being Latina descent her whole personality, but WWE makes her Spanish team present her as the Latina pride or something like that. She says they are gringas with Latin descent, and that's fine. My annoyance is that they are sold like the big Latina representatives, but at the same time, they don't hire people from Latin countries like Chile, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, etc. They're still American. They are Latina descent. I think that's the most accurate way to say it, in my opinion. My point is WWE should invest more in Latin American girls who actually are from there to push the idea of them being Latinas. So, Bayley, who has not used being Mexican a lot in her gimmick, she has actually discussed this before, where I think it was an interview where she actually wrestled as a luchador at an NXT house show back in 2013. So I found the interview, and Bayley says, and she was wrestling as La Luchadora. She says, this was in like January 2013. She was wearing a mask. She said, I couldn't see, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, should I be speaking Spanish? I don't know what's going on. And that's the one time I did it. And then somebody told her that that's not you. And she says that she can't be like Andrade or Rey Mysterio. So she hasn't been trying to make herself Mrs. Latina. So I kind of understand where these people are coming from. But we can go down the line. Zelina Vega speaks some Spanish. She's actually from New York. Bayley is from California, by the way. She's born in California. So she's an American. Zelina Vega was born in New York. She's an American. This person was upset that Zelina Vega doesn't speak fluent Spanish. She only knows the basics. Raquel Rodriguez is from Texas. She has also been criticized for not speaking fluent Spanish. That her Spanish is, though she speaks more Spanish than Zelina and Bayley, it's choppy and it's not fluent. The only Latina on WWE's roster that speaks fluent Spanish is also not from a Latin American country, because it's Lola Vice, who is of Cuban descent. She's actually from Florida, and she speaks fluent Spanish. But that's the crux of this thing, is this person seems to believe that unless you speak fluent Spanish, you are, and from a Latin American country, because you can't just be from Florida and speak fluent Spanish. That's not good enough. If you speak Spanish, that's still not good enough. So this is an interesting discussion, because there was an interview that was done. And I got to tell you the whole story around this thing, because as I was looking up this subject, and I thought it was kind of silly, I came across this site called Remezcla. It means remix in Spanish. And it mentions that Bayley is actually the second female WWE superstar to win the Royal Rumble who was Hispanic. And I was like, what? And I look, and the first is Ronda Rousey, believe it or not. Ronda Rousey, whose parents are, I guess, the professor from the Powerpuff Girls, because there's some of everything floating around in the DNA pool of Ronda Rousey. Apparently, her mother's grandmother is from Venezuela. And this has been a bone of contention for Ronda Rousey, because she feels like she is a Latina, though she doesn't speak Spanish, nor looks like it. So this is what an interview that she did, because she was noticed in a UFC Latin heritage video, and everybody thought that was weird. Like, why is Ronda Rousey in this video? And it turns out that her grandmother, is from Venezuela. So here's the interview. Ronda Rousey says, "I'm half Venezuelan. I'm just as Venezuelan as Maria is." And Maria is her sister, Maria Burns Ortiz. She says, "It's kind of weird that in America you are what you look like, almost because of how people treat you. And when I was younger, I went to a Catholic school that was 99% Latino, and I was really an outcast there. I had so much trouble learning to speak English that I never learned how to speak Spanish. I didn't learn to speak coherently in English until I was around 6 years old. So I didn't look at it, and I didn't speak it. And I was kind of ostracized from that community a little bit. I think it's so cool that people are now starting to notice that and recognize that, yes, this is my heritage. That is where my family is from. I'm glad to be getting a little more acceptance as really being a Latina, even though I don't look it." So this is humorous, okay? The idea that Ronda Rousey, who has apparently a black grandfather and now a Hispanic great-grandmother, is a Latina, the same as Zelina Vega, Elektra Lopez, Lola Vice, and Bailey. So we're looking at this thing, and we're trying to figure out what constitutes representation. You know, a lot of the male superstars, quite a few of them, Carlito, Ray, Damian, Dominic, Santos, they speak fluent Spanish. Santos is the only one of that group that was born in Mexico, however. And Carlito was born in Puerto Rico. So the rest of them are Americans. But whether they speak Spanish fluently or not depends quite a bit on their close ties to that community. And I'm guessing that's what this person is trying to get to, that speaking the language is the bare minimum. One of the things that this individual was trying to put out there is that there are really Mexican female wrestlers that you could go out and sign that would better represent the Latino culture. And much like you would get Dragon Lee, who was born in Mexico, you could go and get a female Mexican wrestler who was born in Mexico. And it wouldn't just be a, quote, stereotype, but it would be somebody who was really from that culture, which I kind of understand. At the same time, though, these people are who they are. It brings me to another subject of representation. This one did not get much traction because it wasn't that big of a deal. But there was a Polynesian wrestling personality on Twitter who was very upset at Roman Reigns and Jey Uso for, I think it was some kind of Polynesian handshake they were doing. And this person flipped out because he's Maori and these are Samoans, and they should know how to do this very special Polynesian handshake so much better. They're out of touch with their heritage. And it's the fault of their fathers for not teaching them how to do this. And they shouldn't be Samoans on TV if they don't know how to do this. If they can't do the haka, if they can't do all this stuff, then they shouldn't be on television being Samoans. This has also become a bonus attention with Cody Rhodes, who his mother is of Cuban descent. And people have jokingly said that Cody is Hispanic. Cody has not really discussed being Hispanic that much, but it has come up here and there. It seems like we're dealing with the tragic mulatto, where there's individuals who reject you because you don't look Hispanic enough. And there are some people who think that, you look Hispanic enough, but you don't speak the language. You look Hispanic enough, you know some basic Spanish, but you're not really Hispanic because you're not from a LATAM country. But I get it. because you have certain people who kind of look Hispanic, Zelina Vega, Raquel Rodriguez, Bailey, etc. And they may be second generation, third generation Hispanic or whatever. And then you have Ronda Rousey, who's like, I have a grandmother who is a great grandmother who is Hispanic. So I'm Hispanic. And other people are kind of like, So, I mean, I get that would concern people. But the fact of the matter is this: the United States is a melting pot. We end up with these weird conversations about what other people's descent are and how much of that is visible in their presentation or their personality. There's still some black people running around here very upset that The Rock isn't, black enough, or he leans too much into Samoan side, or that kind of thing. Again, the tragic tale of the mulatto, who is not accepted by either side because they're not Latin enough for the Latinos. They're not white enough for the white people. And this whole nonsense that we got going on here, I get it. But I think it's kind of silly. If we want to have the representation argument, we can make the argument without diminishing what people actually are. You can make the argument for assigning more women who are from Puerto Rico or Mexico and signing them on the roster without diminishing Bailey, Zelina Vega, etc. because they are who they are. They're Latino, or Latina. They are who they are. And that was how they were born. May not be how they were raised, but it's certainly how they were born. I dislike telling people they have to behave a certain way in order to be accepted. I dislike telling people they have to speak a certain way in order to be accepted. I am an individualist. I believe that people are individuals regardless of how they were born or what ethnicity they may be. You treat people like individuals. I think Bailey is proud of her heritage, which is why sometimes you do see her with the Mexican flag, which is why sometimes she does do the Bailey Martinez thing. But she doesn't speak Spanish. And as long as she doesn't pretend like she speaks Spanish fluently, so what? Zelina Vega did the big show, Backlash. She was, draped in the Puerto Rican flag. People say, oh, she doesn't speak enough Spanish to have such a hero's welcome in Puerto Rico. It's diminishing. And I think enough of these people already have problems with the whole tragic mulatto thing without strangers popping up saying that you don't meet the criteria for being Hispanic or Samoan or black or whatever because you're only half or you're only 1/8. But I also understand the idea that you don't want Ronda Rousey checking a Hispanic box, despite the fact that she not only doesn't speak Spanish, she doesn't look Spanish, and it's so far removed that, most people would never even notice that she was Spanish. But then again, at the same time, if she grew up in a Latino neighborhood, which is what it sounds like she did, she went to a Catholic school, which I know that is very big in the Hispanic neighborhoods. She probably was raised in a Hispanic community. And the criteria for being a Latina shouldn't be that you look brown skinned like everybody else. So I understand where the frustration is coming from, where people are questioning, how could, this person be a real Latino or real Latina or real black person or real Samoan, or, I believe that Mia Yim was, she's black and Korean. She also had that situation where, some people were saying she wasn't black enough or she's not Korean enough or whatever the case may be. But to me, it just seems ridiculous. Like, people are not signposts for things that you would prefer, your preferred sect of society. These are individuals. They have individual lives. They grew up in individual circumstances. I think it's kind of corny to spend a lot of time diminishing who people are as a person because they don't fit your criteria of what they should be as a Hispanic, black, Samoan, Korean, Asian, or whatever the case may be. That seems goofy to me. And it seems like you're actually working in stereotypes. But that's just me. What do you guys think? Let me know, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Tell me what's worse than learning all that you led to believe was all horse crap. They distort, so question as if you